Welcome to the Spinning Our Gears podcast. Before we begin, a quick reminder. All views, issues, and opinions are solely those of the hosts and their guests and do not reflect the opinions or positions of any department, agency, city, county, municipality, state, or country, or any other organization. This show is rated E for explicit. Listening and viewer discretion is highly advised. Spinning Our Gears is a law enforcement leadership and mental health podcast. We confront the issues and conversations others are afraid to deal with, leadership failures, the culture within law enforcement, accountability, and the realities of life on and off the job. You can find us on YouTube, all of the major podcasting platforms and social media outlets, as well as online at spinningourgears.com. And now, without further fanfare, this is the Spinning Our Gears podcast.
Spinning our gears. Admin talks and broken plans, doing the best that we can. Jokes on shift, truth off mic, trying to live a normal life. Mental health ain't weakness, no, it's the stuff we learn as we go. Say it out loud, make it clear, this job don't own us here. So tune it in, don't disappear when it all gets heavy here. Real talk, real voices clear. Spinning Our Gears podcast is here.
What is going on, Warriors, and welcome back to another episode of the Spinning Our Gears podcast. Just a little bit of a snippet there of the new theme song for the Spinning Our Gears podcast. Have to thank the Monsters Unleashed group over on YouTube for that song. We'll play the rest of it here at the end, but we had to get down to business because we have a very special guest here today. You guys are looking at him here on the video. Dr. Travis Yates is joining us in studio. Mr. Yates, how you doing, buddy?
How you doing, man? Thanks so much for having me on. I guess again.
Well, this is something we had to do. We had to bring you on. You had me on last year, 2 years ago, after I did a little thing over there.
Got it right here. It's awesome. Awesome.
So I had to return the favor. We love your energy. We love the stuff that you have to say, and we had to bring you on. So we're very, very happy to have you on the show. For those that don't know, who've been living under a rock, Dr. Yates over here has over 30 years of law enforcement experience with several different degrees, which includes a doctorate in criminal justice. That's why we call him the doctor. He's published several different articles as well as a book himself, which is called The Courageous Police Leaders. And then he has his own podcast called Courageous Leadership. Dr. Yates, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to where you're at right now and what's got you so fired up?
Well, I had no intention to have any sort of public persona. I mean, like most people, I went into law enforcement. I was 21. I actually didn't intend to go into law enforcement. Even though my father was in law enforcement growing up, I had other interests. But I went on a ride-along at age 19 and totally radically changed the course of my life. You and I wouldn't be talking right now, I'm sure, if I wouldn't have gone on that ride-along. And it was one of these crazy ride-alongs, right? Like everything, it was like a Cops episode. Everything happened. I remember looking over at the guy about halfway through the shift, and I said, "Do they pay you for this?" And he goes, "Twice a month." I said, "Man, I got to get some of this." And so I changed. I was in college at the time, changed my degree, just started applying. I was going to do this job anywhere I could. Tulsa, Oklahoma was the first one that gave me a shot. Kind of blinked, and 30 years later, retired a couple years ago. And, you know, I was very fortunate in Tulsa. I tell people I didn't know anybody in Tulsa. I wasn't from Tulsa. And of course, everybody, all the cops were like, "Oh, you got to know somebody, and you got to have this. I didn't know anybody. I just worked hard and did what I thought was right. Worked my way up through the ranks, which really wasn't even planned. I was promoted the first time with about 3.5 years on. Spent, 5, 6, 7 years as a sergeant. Spent a decade as a captain. Spent another decade as a commander, a major, which was right below the chief's office. None of that was planned. It just happened. But what happened, I got really interested in emergency vehicle operations. So about 3 or 4 years on, I was in the academy, and I'm on this emergency vehicle operations course, and people don't know what that is. It's, they teach you to drive a police car, they teach you to drive it fast, they teach you to drive a licensed siren. And once again, about halfway through that class, I said, do they pay you for this? And the instructor goes, yep. He goes, my full-time job is a street cop, but I will have special assignment to come out here and I train. I said, oh, so you could actually get paid to come out here and drive this car like this? Yeah. So as soon as I was eligible, which is about 3 years, I applied to be a part-time instructor. I got chosen, went through all that training, and man, I lived it and breathed it. And like probably for 10 years, that is just everything I thought of. Well, along the way, I found myself running that unit, and I found myself involved with some change in that unit that made a big difference. And this is sort of the early days of the internet, 99, 2000. And I couldn't find any information. So I was trying to do these things to help my department. I couldn't find any information. I cobbled some of it together, and it worked. We reduced collisions about 50%. And I started getting all these phone calls from people going, hey, we heard you did some things over there. Can you send us, what you did? And this is how long ago it was, Turk. I was sending CD-ROMs in the mail to instructors around the country. And at some point, I was like, man, this is kind of expensive, and it kind of takes a long time. I got another job to do here. So I had this weird idea to put a website up. Well, the problem is in 1999, man, you had to have about 50 grand in the bank to put a website up. But I figured it out. The software's not even used anymore, called Microsoft Front Page. It's the dumbest thing ever. And I remember this website, a little police car going across the top. I was so proud of it, like this old school police website. It was called policedriving.com. Still have the domain. And I go, if I put this website up, everybody leave me alone. So I put the website up and put all the information on there. It was so early days of the internet, you could put any music you wanted. I mean, there was no YouTube. It was all like, download this music and this video that we put together. Download all this curriculum.
Dr. Yates may have some copyright warrants out for his arrest right now.
Yeah, I don't think it counted. That was in the days of LimeWire, man. It didn't count back then, right? But what happened was it backfired. Unbeknownst to me, I was the first person on the internet talking about EVOC, and it blew up. And next thing I know, I'm getting 10, 20 emails a day. I'm like, this did not work. Police One called. It was early days of Police One, kind of in their heyday. And
when they were good,
writing every month for them, not thinking much of it. Next thing I know, I started getting these phone calls. Hey, will you come train us? And will you come talk to us? And I was like, what are you talking about? Like I said, this was all so improbable. Eventually, I did that, and for the last 25 years, I've been traveling around the country teaching and training and consulting. Along the way, I made friends at Law Officer Magazine and Police One, and I've got all these connections around the country, and it was all just simply by accident. Now, I don't do a lot of EVOC stuff today. I morphed about a decade ago into leadership issues and now into pre-attack indicators issues. I've been teaching a class on that about 12 years. And so but it was those early days of EVOC, and there's other guys doing that stuff now, and I'm glad, but it was kind of a crazy story because, people will sometimes see me now and go, oh, look at you doing this or that. I'm like, bro, this was not the plan. I mean, I just wanted to be a police officer. And then I had this sort of personality trait that is good or bad where, man, I just tell the truth. And I just see something that's wrong and I just speak about it. And they go, wow, you're controversial. I'm like, since when is the truth controversial? I mean, we have a silent profession, right? People are scared to death to speak and scared to death to talk. And so I just never subscribed to that. And that sometimes would, make my bosses unhappy, but they could have told me to stop at any time. They never did. The truth is they sort of liked it. They just didn't want to be the one doing it.
Yeah.
And so I just sort of found myself, talking to folks like you and meeting folks like you. And I'm always uncomfortable when people go, oh, it's the doctor. Oh, he's this influencer. Because that's not really who I am. It's just happened, right?
Yeah.
And so, but it's been, like I said, I've been in, I don't know, man, 47 states, 4 countries. I mean, I've been able to meet so many people. It's been a real blessing, but it was not planned whatsoever.
It's a little surprised that the guys at the top were, willing to let you run with that. Usually when you see a guy that starts to branch out a little bit and get that notoriety and start getting called from other agencies, leadership usually tends to shut that down. Kind of, it's taken the light away from them. So that's pretty cool.
You said something that I don't think a lot of people know. I don't know if it's outside of law enforcement, but in law enforcement, man, it's kind of the unwritten rule, like you don't want to outshine anyone.
Yes.
Like you don't want to outshine your boss or whatever. And I've never wanted to do that. In fact, I would train or travel and not tell anybody. I would say I'm taking vacation.
Gotcha.
Right? Well, then along the way, I can tell you exactly what happened. So I was doing all this, And they didn't know I was doing it. I would just take vacation and I'd go do my thing. And a couple things happened. Liner Duty Films contacted me. They wanted to come into town and do a big training series on EVOC. It's still up on their site, by the way. And then I got CNN and Associated Press. A bunch of people started traveling to our department to talk about this issue, because we all know about these issues now, but at the time it was kind of a new issue. And so I just said yes. Well, that was kind of a mistake, because that sort of put me in the spotlight, and my bosses were like, what's going on here? And then I go to the ILETA conference. It's a huge trainers conference. At the time it's in Chicago every year. Now it's in St. Louis, but if you're in law enforcement training, you probably know what ILETA is. And I went to the FBI National Academy in '06, and my roommate says, hey, man, you're a trainer. You would like ILETA. I didn't know about it. And so I started going to ILETA every year with him. My department would not pay. They quit paying my way a long time ago, but I'd stay in his room. I'd buy my own plane ticket. Well, in '08, I won the International Trainer of the Year. And sadly, my first thought was, my department can't find out about this. I don't think it was unique to my department. I talked to a lot of people around the country in law enforcement that say, man, I've been in so much trouble because I had the audacity to actually do something outside of my department. And so I get back, I don't say a word. It was kind of a highlight of my career, you know. Ed Nowicki was the first winner, and he's a legend in law enforcement. And I won right after him in year 2, and it's called the Ed Nowicki Award. It's really cool. It's in my mantle in my office. And what happened, though, about a month later, one of the commanders, I was a sergeant at the time, one of the commanders he saw it in a magazine or something, and he thought this would be good to sort of highlight what one of our officers is doing, so he announced it at a staff meeting. And I'll never forget, I came into work that night, and I was looking at the staff meeting notes, and I see it, and I go, oh, no. 1 week later, I was removed from training. Never to train at my department again, even though I was training all over the world.
Shocker.
And so, yeah, it's unfortunate. I had people that worked for me, Turk, that did a lot of cool things. We've had officers that on live PD and all kinds of cool stuff. I mean, I encourage that. That makes the department look good. I mean, if you've got those talents to where you can do that outside the department, how does that make the department look good? So I've never understood that ideology. I've never understood it at all. But there's no question that my career suffered because of my outside. There's no question. I mean, maybe I was a jerk once in a while and deserved what I got, but I'm pretty sure that there was a lot of instances where I didn't do anything wrong other than just do what I do, use the talents God gave me, and it was not well liked, unfortunately.
Well, and you hit it there. It's sad because the greatest cops and the greatest leaders are the ones that go into instructorship, because they see the potential that it has to mold new officers coming in and to make that change and make that impact. And unfortunately, the departments want you to be an expert. They want you to have that passion until that passion starts to gain you notoriety, or you have an opinion, and then all of a sudden they're going to start kind of shutting you down. Is this where things started to shift for you, where the courageous leadership started, where that movement started to take place? Was it a little bit later on?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think I've ever been asked that question, but you're right. I was in leadership positions, although there's a difference between being in an authority position and actually being a leader. Everyone's a leader. Our profession does not promote that enough. But when these things started happening, I think I was grasping for reasons why, and I started kind of looking around, and I kind of started putting it all together. And in fact, I wrote my book prior to 2020. People read the book and go, oh, yeah, you're talking about 2020. No, bro, I started writing that in 2017. Like, I saw it coming. Because I was traveling the country talking to everybody, and I was seeing what's happening in my department. And I was seeing that the vast majority of our problems were because of us. We blame the activists and we blame the politicians. No, we're the ones that agree to that. We're the ones that bow down to that. They're not making decisions inside police departments. It's us. And so, yeah, that's exactly where it started happening. And as I did in EVOC 30 years ago, I got super invested in all things leadership. I mean, I have 300 or 400 books on it. I read it, study it, talk about it every day, because I was seeking for answers to the problems that I was not only experiencing myself, but the problems I was seeing in the profession and the world. So from 2016 on, man, I was all in on it, and I just wrote the book. I started teaching. I'll tell you, I was really upset by all this, and I'll never forget this kind of seminal moment. I was down in Dallas, Texas, speaking to a good friend of mine, Keith Wenzel. He's a retired sergeant, Dallas PD, and I just always like throwing ideas by him. He's a great trainer, by the way. And I was kind of complaining to Keith about this leadership thing, and Keith says, hey, you need to do something about this. I said, what are you talking about, do something about this? He goes, you need to teach it. And, of course, at that point, 2014, 2015, I'd been to all this stuff, and it was all crap. I've been to IEC. I mean, I went to 3 weeks of ICP stuff. Perf is where all the East Coast chiefs go to die. I've been to the FBI NA, where you go from NA to AA. I've been to all of it. And there's probably a place for some of it, except for Perf. There's probably a place for some of it. But it was all just basic, generic stuff. And I always thought to myself, if this stuff worked, why are we dealing with the problems we're dealing with? You know, because I remember going to the FBI NA up in Quantico, and like, you're in the top 1% of the leaders. And I go, well, what's wrong with y'all then? Because if you're staying in the top 1% up here, how come we're having all these problems? And so I didn't want to get involved in teaching leadership because I knew the negative connotation from the officers. The officers hated leadership training because they were working for people that had gone to that training that were terrible people. And so I didn't want anything to do with it, even though I was training in a bunch of different areas. And Keith really sort of pushed me. He says, no, you got to quit complaining. You got to do something about it. And so I put together this first class, Courageous Leadership. And you know, I didn't think anybody would be interested in it. And we taught the first class up at Milwaukee County at Sheriff David Clark at the time, Sheriff's Department. It was a bunch of people showed up. I'd been in enough rooms teaching to know that when you look in people's eyes, you know that you're onto something.
Yep.
And I saw it immediately. I go, oh, man. And I knew I was saying things no one else was saying. People to this day will come to the class and say, man, I had no idea it was about this. Because that's part of the problem is people see leadership, they go, I'm not going to that. But if they do come to it, on the first break, they all come up and go, I had no idea. I said, well, yeah, why do I want to do what everybody else does? And so I only wrote the book because I thought, man, more people need to see this, right? More people need to be exposed to this. I can't only speak to so many people. And then, you know, the book came out in oh my gosh.
July 4th?
July 4th, 2019, July 4th, 2019. Yeah. It's still rocking to this day. And I'm like, I would take credit for that, but it's also unfortunate because the only reason the book's popular is because how terrible leadership is, because that's what it speaks to.
I'm assuming that the July 4th drop was intentional.
You would assume correct.
Yeah. That is so badass.
That was my editor's idea, actually. It's my editor's idea. And in fact, my editor called me the week before it was being published, and he said, man, are you sure you want to do this? Now, he was sort of a prophet, and I go, what are you talking about? He goes, I've worked like 3 years on this thing. And you know how labor-intensive it is, Turk. By the way, you got to get Turk's. It's incredible, man. It's incredible. You got to get his book.
Thank you. Book 2's in the works.
And I said, what are you talking about? He goes, well, you're still on the job. But I had just written the truth. There wasn't anything controversial in the book. I was just like written what was actually there. It was a bunch of citations. And I go, why is this guy asking me that, right? Well, he knew. And the minute that book came out, all hell broke loose, you know, internally for me. And to be honest, my career was never the same. I'm not saying it's all someone else's fault. I'm sure I'm an asshole once in a while, and maybe that's why there were problems created for me. But I'm pretty sure that there's a delineal line between pre-book publish and post-book publish. And it was not comfortable at all. I was very fortunate to make it 30 years. I will tell you a funny story, though. I ran across a commander at the Oklahoma City Police Department. He's now retired, but he was over the academy. And this was about a year ago when he comes up to me, and he kind of starts talking real quiet, and he goes, hey, man, he goes, I got your book. And I go, why are you whispering?
Because I don't want to get fired.
He said, I had your book at the academy, but I had to keep the book hidden because I didn't want anyone to know I had the book. And that's just crazy to me, right? Because anyone that's read it, I mean, there's nothing wild in the book at all. I mean, you know, but because it is so truthful about what's going on in the profession, it's, in fact, what he told me was, he goes, I treat this book like a porn magazine. I don't want anybody to see I have it. It was actually the greatest compliment I think I've ever could have, but I think that's just a sad state of affairs for the profession. I wish I never had to write the book. I wish I never had to talk about this stuff. There's so much work to be done, and I appreciate you having me on.
And, you know, you told me that when you had me on, you mentioned there's going to be a shift. It's going to happen, and we'll talk about it later. But sure enough, it happened.
It is so unfortunate, man. I'll never understand it. All I know to do is try to speak about it, and maybe we wake some people up to it.
Yeah, and I think, the difference that I had was I kept everything completely anonymous, did not use any names, and still just that rumor mill and the hurt feelings is what took off on it. But absolutely.
Yeah, I remember I got transferred early on, and my chief said, "You wrote this book about me." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Like, first off, you're not that interesting. Why would I write a book about you? But second off, the book is about it's written to a national audience. I go, if you read that book and you read things about what a cowardly leader's like, and you internalize that to say that was you, that is your problem, man. It's not my problem. But he was convinced of it.
The book is The Courageous Police Leader. It's on Amazon. Highly, highly recommend it. If you have not picked it up, I don't know what you're waiting for. Go get it right now. Pause the episode and go get it right now, because it is very, very good. And every police officer in this country needs to read that book. I think it's time to start diving into some of the stuff that you want to talk about. It's been a little bit low-key for the first 20 minutes, but for those that know Mr. Yates over here, you know how passionate he can be, and you know how fired up he can be. And I think that's where we're going to turn it up right now. There were a few things that you wanted to talk about. I did a little bit of research into it, and I think we should dive into it. The first one was the article that you wrote about the sacred cow getting cops killed. What do you want to talk to us about with that? And let's get rolling.
Man, Turk, listen, man. I had no desire to get involved in this, but I have obviously in the training circles. Those that are high-level trainers, you're always going to be paying attention to the trends. You pay attention to the line of duty deaths, stats, things like this. And I've been teaching this class for, I think, about 12 years now, called Seconds for Survival. And I've always treated the class as kind of like, man, I'm a leadership guy, but this class is fun to teach. I've always been into pre-attack indicators, human behavior, and people, maybe if you're not in law enforcement, you don't know this, but before violence occurs, you always see signs of the violence. It's been studied, over a century by researchers. And so I had this kind of cool little class I like doing, and I have to give credit to Sergeant Jim Clark, a long now retired Tulsa Police Department. When I was a rookie, he would teach a class like this to us. 2 or 3 hours. He'd put in these old VCR tapes. We'd watch these encounters, and we would talk about it. And ever since then, man, I credit it for really keeping me safe throughout my career. But I was just really interested in it. So I'd put this class together 10, 12 years ago, a bunch of, but this class was I taught this class more than anything. Even though I'm like, hey, I teach this leadership class, we don't want that. We want this tactical thing. And but when I first started teaching the class, I would hear, hey, man, it's a great reminder. Because every cop that was a cop for at least 10 years now has been to something in the academy, or your FTOs talk to you about, hey, if you're talking to somebody and they start sort of looking around, or they start blading away, their hands go in their pocket, you have to take these precautions. So everyone's exposed to that. So the class was a great reminder. It's pretty entertaining, a lot of videos. People would come, thanks for the reminder. Well, with the last 5 years, people are coming up to me going, I've never heard of this. It was a shift, man. I would say 2020, 2021, I had newer cops come up to me going, I've never heard of this.
You mean the guys that were doing digital academies because of COVID? Is that what you're talking about?
I think they've quit teaching it
in
many academies. I think when you look at the training push has gone on, de-escalation this and de-escalation that, and they've quit teaching it. But the truth is, if you want to de-escalate, then you need to know this. De-escalation isn't somebody starts acting, giving you all these behavioral cues and you just start being nice like Chick-fil-A. That doesn't stop the behavioral cues. If you see behavioral cues for violence, you need to intervene before the violence. And that's really what the class is about. Hey, if you're talking to somebody and they start looking around and scanning, or throw some handcuffs on them. Like, just do it quick and then talk to them, because something's about to happen. And so it's the basic class in that sense, but people kept telling me, I'm not seeing this. So I started feeling to myself, we need to do more. But then again, I'm like, I'm a leadership guy. But the more I thought about it, I'm like, well, if leadership isn't officer safety, what is it, right? And no one's talking about it. And I get a call from a lawyer up in Omaha, Nebraska, and he needed an expert in a case because it was a pre-incident indicator. An officer had used force based on all the indicators, completely justified case. And I started diving into and he tells me, I said, well, why are you calling me? He goes, well, you're the expert in this. And I'm like, that's a problem. Why am I the expert in this? And I start looking around, Turk, and I don't see a lot of people talking about it. And I'm like, what's happening here, right? This was basic 101 stuff 20 years ago. And so then that sort of sends me down this rabbit hole of what's going on. And I start, and if people don't know this, officer injuries have increased every year since 2020 to 2024, the last year we have on record, the highest ever. When I started teaching this class more than a decade ago, I used to say, we just broke the record for officer assaults at 58,000 a year, which is underreported because only about 50% of the departments report that to the FBI. Well, it was 86,000 in 2024, 25%, and no one's talking about it. In fact, we have leaders going, look at our line of duty deaths are lower now.
Yep.
Shut up, dude.
Yep.
Our assault rates are higher than they've ever been in history. And so, but that doesn't make any sense. Like, if you believe the stats, violent crime has ticked down a tad in the last couple of years, and our assaults keep going up. So I start searching for an answer. Just crazy me. I'm like, let's figure out what's going on here. And so I start diving into a lot of the research and peer-reviewed research. I wouldn't recommend a doctorate for anybody because it just makes you dumber. But what it did teach me was what was actual research, what is valid research. People, they don't know this, but a lot of the research has been taken over by crazy people, and it's biased. But it taught me how to look for real research and how to do real research. And I just dived into de-escalation. And what I discovered was crazy. And what I discovered was, as these officer injuries are going up every year, that nobody seems to be seeking for an answer. I mean, ICP, FOP, all these major organizations that you think are for you, they're not searching for an answer, right? If anything, they're funding the de-escalation efforts. Well, I go, that's fine and dandy. Let's see if it works. And do you know that there is no scientific basis that de-escalation works? In fact, there's almost no studies on it. And, of course, my theory is if they studied it, they would find out it doesn't work, so we better not study it. Well, I'll just tell you about one quick study. It's done by PERF, and it's about as basic of a study as you can do, which is the only thing PERF would be able to do. They showed citizens legal justified force on video. And shocker, 50% of the citizens said it was excessive force. That shouldn't shock anybody. I mean, they don't know what the rules are. Well, instead of PERF saying, hey, we should educate the public more, they said you should lower your standards to the public expectation, which is highly dangerous for law enforcement. And then they gave an example, South Bend, Indiana. Look, South Bend, Indiana did this. They have a mandatory de-escalation policy, and they can only use force as a last resort, which they don't define what that is, by the way. And the FBI has said that's a highly recognized as being very, very dangerous. I have a study on that. And so they use this, and I go, well, and then they just stop. They're like, just be like South Bend, Indiana, be like Mike. And I go, well, let's go check out South Bend, Indiana, because all I know about South Bend, Indiana is it's the crap hole, right? It's like a lot of high crime and a lot of problems in South Bend, Indiana. Right on their website, they list use of force numbers and officer injury numbers right on their website. So this did not take a rocket science to figure this out. Before they implemented their new policies that PERF loves, and after, their use of force increased 64%, and their officer injury rate increased 62%. It made things more dangerous after de-escalation. Then that sent me down another rabbit hole of the states that passed mandatory de-escalation. And post-George Floyd, about 12 states did this. All the use of force policies in this state must have this de-escalation clause. Well, 4 of them listed the stats. On average, their use of force and their injury rates increased about 100%. And so that's what's going on, is we have taken de-escalation, which is a tool that we've always used in non-violent events, and we've applied that to all events and tried to de-escalate violent individuals. And when you give violent individuals time, they will attack, and then we have to use higher levels of force. And so when I talk about being a sacred cow, we're going to come up on this because I've built out courses now to attack this directly.
Hell yeah.
And it's going to rock the profession. First off, they're probably going to ignore it, but it's going to basically say, we have been wrong about all of this. Now, this bothered me so much Because first off, I'm thinking to myself, why am I the one that discovered this? Why am I the one that is talking about this, right? We have all these tactical gurus and organizations. So I've never done this before, but I started contacting some high-level leaders that I respect, courageous leaders, and just showing them what I found, showing them the research. Because, Turk, I went back 5 years at every public domain video use of force and studied it. I have the research. So I know exactly what's going on. And what if I could boil this down into something very succinct for your audience? We see precursors of violence, and we just become like a Chick-fil-A employee. Then that creates the violence. Hundreds of videos. By the way, no one's done that, which kind of was weird. How come no one's done this? We have all this video out there that no one's evaluating this. I have Excel charts of all of it. And so I took this information and I set up meetings with a bunch of high-level people. One conversation was chilling. He was I'm not going to name the department because people are going to know who it is, but he was the number 2 guy in charge of the largest state police in the world. Okay, you can probably figure that out. He's retired now, but he was number 2, and he was the guy, he'd be at the ICP stuff behind the scenes, in the committees, behind it. You know what he tells me? He goes, Travis, they know it. They know it. He goes, what you found on a large scale, these individual leaders are seeing it in their departments, and they know it. But they're more concerned about appeasing the people that don't know anything about the profession and say that we're doing de-escalation and we're doing this and we're doing that than actually providing safety for their officers. And so when I call it a sacred cow, there'll be people that try to go crazy about it, but they're not going to have the research because the research doesn't exist for what they're trying to say. So what I would say is I don't want to throw out de-escalation. There are certainly times de-escalation works. We've done it ever since the inception of our profession. But I had the research to say that if you're in a situation that is a tactical, higher level, dangerous type call, you better drop the de-escalation.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, right now, I've gone back 5 years, and I'm probably going to stop there because I have enough for the research. De-escalation has officially worked 0 times in those violent encounters. They've been attempted in almost all of them. They have never worked. And what I'm going to be able to do is once we launch this training in the spring, it's called FOCUS, Field Observable Cues for Unknown Situations. It's going to be validated, certified, and I want to come back to that in a minute, maybe later on in the show, because this will drive you crazy too. But once the department embraces this and trains their department, once we study pre and post, and if there's anybody out there that wants to do this, please contact me, we're going to find that officer injuries drastically reduced, and we're going to find that higher levels of force are drastically reduced, which is exact opposite de-escalation causes.
Right. So much to cover here. First and foremost, use of force is never pretty, and that's what the leaders have forgotten. That's what they've. It's great to say we're going to de-escalate because you know that use of force isn't pretty. But when you talk about these pre-attack indicators, a 30-minute or an hour PowerPoint isn't going to get it done because it's something you have to ingrain in the back of your head. I remember, I started my career off in the jail, so I would see these things. It was ingrained in me. I was living it every single day. Fast forward 13 years, I'm out with a subject who I did not know had just been released from prison. They could have gone downhill very quickly. It's one of the first times in my career that I remember thinking, I'm going to have to shoot this person. Luckily, we were able to calm things down, wrap everything up with a bow. But looking back on it, my subconscious and my body and my mind were telling me all of the pre-attack indicators that he was giving me. He was lacing up his shorts. He bent over and he laced up his boots. He's got the posture. He's looking around. If it wasn't for the training that I had 15, 16, 17 years ago and my subconscious kicking in, things would have gone bad because there probably would have been an OIS that would have been avoidable because of all the training that I had. So absolutely, we need to start hammering this stuff back into the kids that are going through the academy. And I do think that part of it is that whole COVID, they weren't in person for a long time. And then the academy found out that, well, we can sign off on them, so it's all okay.
Well, and think about this. And I've had some very highly respected leaders talking about this. They're seeing this. Think about a baby forms, the formative years of a baby are so vital for how they are as an adult. Well, imagine if you took the first 2 years of an officer's career away from them. You gave them lackluster training, and then for the first year on the street, you told them to be a fireman and sit in their car and do nothing. We're not going to stop cars because of COVID. And then you expect them at 3, 4, 5 years to all of a sudden be a great cop. It's never going to happen. That is embedded in every department in America, and these departments are finding out they're having a real difficult time trying to catch them up at this moment. I was just at a department that told me that whole story. Like, man, we need you in here because our officers with 3 or 5 or less years on are literally getting into all kinds of issues with use of force because of that foundational issue.
And I think that we used to have this idea of ask, tell, make, right? With the senior officers, it was you ask the person to do something. If they don't do it, you tell them. And if they don't do it then you're going to make them do it. Because we had a different breed of officers back then. Now it almost seems like the officer is asking a million times, telling a million times, because they're waiting for their backup to show up. Either they don't have that spine to go hands on themselves, or they're constantly afraid of what their admin is going to do to them.
Well, one of the things why we're going to bring research into this training, there's 2 quick stories. First one is I was teaching this class about, I don't know, couple months ago, the Seconds for Survival class, the basic class, and this kid comes up to me and he goes, "Man, I really love this. It was good. You tied it to case law. I mean, it's really going to be helpful." And I'm thinking, this is going pretty good. And then he says, "But if I do this, my chief will fire me." He's right.
Yeah.
There'll be some chiefs that would, because we say these crazy things like, "Hey, man, if somebody's refusing your commands, get some distance or put them in handcuffs." These crazy ideas, in law enforcement. So that got me to thinking about having to do this validated peer-reviewed research type study to implement in the training, because then let's argue with that. And I can tell you, if anybody's listening, I'll just give you a brief synopsis of what I found. And once again, 5 years of public domain use of force videos, officers being shot or shot at, what's happening before that. 91% of those cases, amplifier was going on before the contact. And here's what an amplifier is in our training. It's information you have on the call that should make you more tactically aware. Domestic violence, robbery in progress, man with the gun. Pay attention. When you watch these videos on YouTube and they come across, don't watch, pay attention to what happened, but look in the description and see what type of call it was. And 91% of the time, an officer was made aware, this is not just stopping grandma here. I got to be tactical.
Right.
Well, that's 91% of the time. 100% of the time, I believe that's called validated. They got non-compliance. So what does that tell me? If it's an amplifier and it's non-compliance, and by the way, these are videos where officers were shot at or shot. If it's an amplifier and non-compliance, you can leave your de-escalation at the perf desk.
Right.
Just don't do it.
Right.
Because it never worked. But what we're seeing is, and you'll see them in these videos, Turk, they're showing up and they're doing the de-escalation with those 2 things in play. Stop. There may be a call the de-escalation is going to work. I would say, non-violent individual that's compliant, that maybe they're having some mental health issues or whatever, de-escalate all you want. But you cannot give potentially violent people time to be violent, because they are almost always going to be violent. And that's just what the research says. You can get mad about that. So I would say if you're in law enforcement listening to this and you get sort of a higher level type call and you immediately get non-compliance, quit giving them commands and get to work.
Yeah.
Get some distance, get some handcuffs, get some backup, but you have to stop going down this road, because that is a huge indicator of officers being attacked. And there's really some sad videos out there. I mean, there's officers that should not be dead because of this. So I'm hopeful that the people that need this, that once God wants to put us in front of, I'll be able to get in front of. But I also know that this sacred cow we're talking about, they're going to lose their mind, because it's. And you know what? Let me just give you the dirty little secret. The reason it's a sacred cow, it's not because it works. It's because there's a lot of money in it, man. There's a lot of money in it. You would be amazed at the kind of money flowing around inside law enforcement. We talk about the fraud and all this and politics. Law enforcement's got the same problem.
Yeah.
A lot of money's flowing around. A lot of people would lose money on it.
A ton of money is floating around. And that's okay. So that's part of the problem. I kind of bring this back to square one of where this issue started, because de-escalation has its place in time, like you talked about. For the most part, it is with mental health calls. And we have started to blur the line of, well, if it's working for mental health issues, why isn't it working for, Joe Crapbag on the street who's wanting to fight me? And I attended a training that got me, I think I posted on it, I was so pissed off sitting in this training because the core fundamentals of it were great. And I hesitate to put it out there. I'm going to say it right now. Maybe.
ICAT?
What's that?
Was it ICAT?
Oh, yes. Yes, that's exactly what it was.
I just mentioned all the money flowing, right?
Right. So the core fundamentals of that class were great. However, the issue was I'm sitting in this class with 50 plus people in it. I was the only non-promoted person in this class, and all of the other people were generally lieutenants and above. And you sit in this class and you watch what they're putting on, and then all of a sudden at the end of every case study, they would say, oh, and by the way, this case study paid out X number of $1 million because it went to force. And every single one of those admins picked up their pen and they were writing the numbers down. They didn't care about the stuff before that. They had all of the numbers put down. And then you had a guy step up, and he was an instructor, and he talked about how Graham versus Connor was like scoring a 70% on a test. And he expects his officers and anyone who went through the test to score a 90. And he will sit on the stand as an expert witness, and he will testify that he's expecting 90% or above of a success rate and these tactics or whatever to situations he wasn't involved in, that he didn't sit in. He's just on the stand now, basically defaming these officers who had to actually go hands-on, maybe had to pull the trigger, because he can sit back as a Monday morning quarterback and look at those things. So yes, that was the class that I sat through, and I got so absolutely irate because the fundamentals weren't looked at. It was all the statistics, the numbers, and how much money could we spend if we have to go hands-on.
That's the crowd talked about. That is infested itself in almost every department, especially every major department. And I don't want to throw it out with the bathwater. I don't want to throw it out, but you cannot look at reality and say that can be applied to every single officer encounter. I mean, and our leaders are expecting that because they're putting it in policy that before you use force, but do this. No, you can't do that. And so we're going to make this, people that want to save officers' lives, we're going to make this very simple for them. We will have a huge certification program to where you can do a train-the-trainer and train your entire department in focus. We're going to have policy templates and PowerPoint templates and everything, because we don't want to. Now, they're going to say we're trash de-escalation. That's not what we're doing, because they're so ingrained in it. It's all or nothing. But the research is clear, man. If there are certain behaviors you're observing or that you know of, that de-escalation will get you hurt, will get you killed, will cause more problems. And, I mean, the fact that Perf is pitching these departments and it's so clear, I mean, what if we looked at that nationwide? Well, I don't have to. That's why officer assaults continue to increase every year. What's changed since 2020 and why they've increased every single year? I wonder what that is. We all know what it is.
Right. And I want to stress that de-escalation not only has its time and its place, it works for larger agencies where you've got 2 and 3 people as your backup. If you live in a state like me, where 85 or 90% of the agencies, you're probably the only officer responding to a call, and your backup's 25, 30 minutes away, yeah, you can talk a little bit, but...
Turk, you tell me this, and because you've been in the class, so be honest with me, because I've only looked at 5 years of videos, which is hundreds. I never saw a potentially violent person be de-escalated into being not violent without hands-on, handcuffs, you name it. If that was going on and that was the success rate of ICAT and de-escalation, did they show you all those videos in class to show you how a violent person was all of a sudden de-escalated? Did you see a lot of that?
They showed a lot of videos of where it went bad.
Yeah, of course.
You know,
of course.
There was, I think, one video that I can think of that there were a lot of factors involved in it, right? And they showed the video because they said, this is Officer X at our department, and before he took this training, he had this many uses of force and this many complaints filed against him, and since taking this training, everything has been all roses and cherries.
Think about this, though. Think about this. That defies logic. If de-escalation worked against violent people, where's all the videos?
Right.
I mean, seriously. I mean, I think that's what I would ask the guy in class that I would never be invited to. I'm like, well, if this works, quit giving me the data.
Yeah.
Show me the actual videos of it. They can only show you videos of violence because that's what violent people do.
But this is the issue that I had, Travis, was that the one video they showed of this officer, they had 2 or 3 other officers backing him up, and they're talking to a lady inside of her bedroom with a bunch of objects in between the officers and her, and she's got a knife. And they talk her down out of, doing something. She was about 350 pounds. You got a person with a knife, and you're now telling officers you can de-escalate that. So the next time one of these 1 to 5 year officers goes to a call with a guy with a knife, they're going to forget that distance rule. They're going to forget the fact they have to create distance because a knife can kill you. And they're going to say, well, I watched a video where a guy de-escalated.
And they're going to forget the fact that 99 times out of 100, it doesn't work.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's. I would love to see the explanation of why are all these assault rates increasing in these departments. And I know ICAT is they've done a pretty nifty job of. They've got a couple of studies out there from a couple of departments. Well, once again, I'm not going to come back and talk bad about the studies, but it's really difficult to study law enforcement encounters during COVID years and tell me that use of force is reduced because of this training when we all know that our encounters with citizens were significantly reduced during COVID years.
Yes.
But they tout a couple of studies. Well, there's 18,000 police departments. And all I know is nationwide, assaults against officers are increasing year after year. We've never had 4 years in a row where it's increased every year in our history. So I want someone to explain that to me, because that is really strange that no one's talking about it.
Well, and it's great to do a study when there aren't those things to look at. A department isn't going to report we had a de-escalation that worked. So how are you doing a study saying that your de-escalation is appropriate or that it works?
Well, and I keep coming back to this in my small brain. All these police videos out there that if I was a police chief and my de-escalation training was de-escalation all this violence, we'd be promoting those videos and showing the public.
1,000,000%.
Where is it?
Right.
Where is it?
Right. 1,000,000% we would, because it's the pretty thing, it's the pretty term that we have given to the public. So yeah, why aren't we showing all these videos of our excellent police officers? And I'm not knocking police officers, because there are a lot of great ones out there. But if there's all these videos, why aren't we showing them?
Now, I have the videos, Turk, and we'll show them in our certification. But here's the videos I have. I have videos of officers being shot where they stepped back and they let 19, 20 pre-incident indicators occur and didn't do anything, and they got shot. Then I have other videos where 1 or 2 indicators happen and the officer put handcuffs on them, and there's no incident.
That's right. It didn't look good. It looked ugly.
But the data would say, well, you used force because you had to use an arm bar, you had to put handcuffs on them, or you had to tackle them.
Right.
That doesn't look good. Well, what really doesn't look good is when we have to shoot people dead because we've waited way too long.
Yes. And again, we've forgotten that you can detain a person. You can put a person in handcuffs for detainment, and then when everything's calm, all you got to do is unlock those handcuffs. Handcuffs doesn't mean they're under arrest. But because Monday morning quarterbacks and the public who doesn't know, like you talked about, have started commenting on YouTube and TikTok and all those things, the admin have listened to that, and they've got this perception that, hey, we need to stay hands off, we need to de-escalate. And like you said, it's getting cops hurt and getting cops killed.
Well, and it's the last time I'll say it, but that's that sacred cow. By staying hands off, you're creating higher levels of force. I mean, I have the data to show it, man. I have the data to show it.